What's up, Radar Shade Surgeon here. Today we're going to talk about how Harley Davidson ruined Japanese motorcycles, specifically Japanese cruisers. This isn't one people usually like to hear me talk about because nobody defends their bike the way a Japanese cruiser owner defends their bike. They will absolutely go to the mat for their motorcycle. These guys have bigger chips on their shoulders than 14-year-old mall goths in small-town Midwest. It's a top 5 brawl between the most die-hard, quasi-religious fandom between Trekkies, Juggalos, pro wrestling guys, MTG players, and Honda VTX owners. These guys are just so ready for someone to talk crap. All you gotta do is tell them that you ride a Harley Davidson. Like not even making a comparison between Harley and Japanese bikes. Just tell them what type of a motorcycle you ride, and all of a sudden they have Tourette's. It's like telling a Fox News dad that you voted for Biden, or telling Greta Thunberg that you voted for Donald Trump. These guys are powerless to stop themselves. Oh, Harley. It's ancient technology, overpriced crap. It's a tractor, for Christ's sake. It's basically a clothing company at this point, and anybody who rides a Harley Davidson is nothing but a bandwagon corporate cuck who bent over and spread them wide to get plowed by that withered and diseased member of a soulless corporate company whose true spirit has been dead and rotting since the 60s. My metric cruiser is faster, it handles better, and it'll run for 1 billion miles. It floats, it's antimicrobial, and I only paid $13 in a Costco rotisserie chicken straight up for the whole thing. I am a Mensa card-carrying, big-brain super genius, and you are a drooling, lackwit rube. Now be gone from my dominion. Your odious nature and grotesque appearance offends the senses. Hey man, just like a dude yelling the loudest at a straight pride event, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Obviously, I'm ever so slightly exaggerating, and trust me, I get it. The web designers who cosplay Sons of Anarchy on the weekends and color match their vans to their Dynas can be insufferable gatekeepers sometimes. But I'm gonna stand my ground on this one. As a person who's made plenty of videos making fun of Harley Davidsons and also plenty of videos making fun of Japanese cruisers, I can tell you this about the comment section. In the videos I've made making fun of Harleys, the comment section is mostly like, yeah, I get it, it's old tech, whatever. I just like the way it looks, I like the way it makes me feel, and sure, the weekend warriors are annoying, but you know, I just got it for me. Any comment section on a video where I'm poking fun at metric bikes though? People are writing manifestos in that comment section. They're sharpening the knives and they're making death threats. It's a bloodbath in there. If this was the 1800s, those would be the guys slapping me with a glove on Main Street and saying, pistols at dawn, Dave. Anyway, all I'm saying is that this video is gonna piss that kind of dude off. The dude who has just like really hung their hat on Japanese cruisers, and not just that, but like hung their hat on the fact that they're intrinsically better than a Harley Davidson. And honestly, they are. Most of them handle better, they make more horsepower, and they're way cheaper. It's a better bike. But that's not the point I'm trying to make today. Personally, I think the whole concept of a motorcycle in and of itself is intrinsically flawed. Its very design inherently handicaps its ability to perform. To me, trying to design the very best and the most perfect motorcycle just really misses the whole philosophy behind what makes a motorcycle enjoyable, and misses it by quite a wide mark, in my opinion anyway. If you want a perfectly performing vehicle, go drive a car. That's just me though, and I certainly do not claim to speak for everyone. This video ain't gospel. It's just my very flawed, very biased, and very influenced opinion. So chill it on the duels, alright? When I say that Harley Davidson ruined Japanese cruisers, people are gonna go, oh yeah, I know about that. That happened in the 80s because Japan was making way better motorcycles than Harley was, and Harley went and whined and cried to the government, and they put a tariff on any Japanese motorcycle over 700 cc's. Harley, those cheating whiners. Like most things, this is only a very small part of the story. And usually when people say it, they're definitely painting Harley Davidson out to be like this evil, cartoonish bully in this story. The bully who's losing the game, and when they're losing, they have to run and cry to Daddy Reagan, please stop those Japanese people, please help me win, help me beat Japan, Ronnie, come on. And Japan, Japan, those noble, lucky underdogs, Japan. They're just out there trying to make a nice motorcycle. Just out of the kindness of their heart, they're just trying to make a nice, affordable motorcycle for the American people. And Harley has to go and get the government involved. For shame, Harley, for shame.
Sweep the leg. You have a problem with that? no sensei.
When people tell this story, Harley is always just kind of made out to be Cobra Kai in it, okay? They make him out to be these like evil, cringing, bully, poor sports who need the government's help to win. I hate to break this to you, but Japan wasn't exactly making motorcycles for America out of the kindness of their hearts. Throughout the 60s and the 70s, Japan was turning itself into the small vehicle and small electronics manufacturing capital of the world to make usually a product that was either a knockoff or an alternative to a product that already existed inside the United States, which was far and above their largest market. I don't know if anybody watching right now is a history buff. I certainly am. I don't know everything about history, but I do enjoy it. And if you are a history buff, you'll know that Japan does not exactly have a warm and cuddly history. Neither does America, certainly. Neither does America, but Japan, these guys are ruthless. So ruthless that after that whole little fuss in the 1940s, pretty much the whole world was like, yeah, Japan, you're not allowed to have an army anymore. And even Japan was like, nope, we get it, we're actually on your side. We don't think we should have an army either. Japan having an army has like historically ended very poorly for everybody involved, including Japan. So through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s, and continuing on after that, obviously, Japan put all of that rage and energy into production, manufacturing, and exporting products. And just as you can imagine, their business strategies were just as ruthless as their war tactics. The big one that we're really talking about right now is a practice called price dumping. That's where a country, whether it be Japan or China, whoever, produces a very large amount of goods, usually of a product that already exists in the intended market. They produce it at an incredibly cheap rate. They send it all over here, and a lot of times they even sell it at a loss. They'll lose money on them. They don't care. It's all part of the strategy. They'll just do it long enough to put their American competitor out of business. Then when the American equivalent of whatever they happen to be selling closes its doors for good, they just jack up the prices and continue selling the product with no competition. And guess what? That shit works like gangbusters. It works really, really good. Incredibly effective strategy. Some people might say, hey, that's just business and that's that, but it's really not that simple. There's a lot of ways that two countries can go to war with each other, and there's a lot of different ways to win a war. A trade war is a very real thing, and left unchecked, Japan they were winning. They were winning that war. Look around you. How many American TV manufacturers do you see? None. There used to be a lot. And they certainly aren't the only ones to fight and win a war this way. I mean, look at Germany. They might have lost World War II, but you tell me where all the banks are in Europe. I think that they eventually won that one. Anyway, I'm not trying to give an economics lesson here. I'm just saying that Japan was not this innocent, plucky underdog that a lot of people make them out to be in this story. They were playing dirty pool. And it worked. They were just murking American and British companies and manufacturers left and right, dude. It was a massacre. So, in response, during the mid-70s, the United States passed a Trade Act, and Section 201 of that act provided tariff protection from foreign companies whose practices were deemed a threat to American industry. And after Harley Davidson employees bought their company back from AMF, and it was now an employee-owned company again in 1982, well, they applied for that tariff protection, and it was granted in 1983. It was a 5-year-long tariff. That's where a lot of people get it wrong. Some people still think this tariff is in effect. So it was always a 5-year tariff. And the first year was 49%, the second was 35%, then 20%, then 15%, and then 10%. And after the 6th year, the tariff was no longer in effect. Now, after the 4th year, Harley Davidson actually requested the ITC themselves. Harley Davidson, the company, put in this request to end the tariff early. So they only went for 4 years, and that was unheard of. They went in there and they said, nah, we're good, you can end it now. It was supposed to be a show of good faith. At least that's what it was supposed to appear to be. It's very arguable whether any large corporation can really show good faith. That's not really how corporations work. But back then, Harley Davidson was a much smaller company, and it was owned by all the people who worked there. So the public perception of it was one of just very good sportsmanship. Oh, let's get to the point. You remember like a few years ago in this very video that seems like it's really going on for a long time now, before I got to that point. You remember back then when I mentioned a motorcycle's imperfectness being what I loved about it? This is exactly the reason why so many motorcycle companies have engines that have heritage designs. Engine designs that are antiquated and inefficient, but still very, very special in some undefinable way. It's why BMW still puts a boxer engine in their flagship bikes. It's why Triumph still makes parallel twins. And it is 100% why Harley Davidson still slaps a big air-cooled V12 V-twin in their motorcycles. Now, I believe that Japan understood this to a certain degree. Before the CB750 came out, Japan was just basically trying to copy Triumph. They were just basically trying to put just Triumph out of business. They were making small engine bikes, parallel twins, single cylinder bikes. They very much aimed at British motorcycles. Now, four-cylinder motorcycles were actually popular as a motorcycle engine style than a V-twin in the very early days of motorcycles. I'm talking way, way early, with the FN4 being the first one in 1905, but nobody really mass-produced one after Indian and Excelsior Henderson stopped making them in the late 1940s. When the Honda released the CB750 in 1968, nobody'd seen anything like it. And outside of some very obscure Italian racing motorcycles, MV Agusta made one for example, nobody had ever seen a transversely mounted four-cylinder engine in a motorcycle. As most of you guys know, the CB750 went down in history as being one of the most legendary bikes ever produced, and every other single Japanese company of the Big Four quickly followed suit and made their own iterations of transversely mounted four-cylinder engines, as they do. Now, I keep saying cruiser, I keep saying Harley Davidson ruined the Japanese cruiser, but back in the 70s, nobody really used the term cruiser. What we call a cruiser motorcycle now, back then would have been called a custom, like a factory custom, and it was born out of the chopper scene in the 1960s. In the 1960s, no corporation would ever consider building a custom or a chopper from the factory. Customs and choppers were seen as dirty, dangerous machines ridden by equally dirty and dangerous people. All that changed in 1969 when the movie Easy Rider came out, and all of a sudden, everybody was scrambling to make a factory custom. And you gotta remember, the term cruiser didn't exist back then. There was just motorcycles, and the custom was something new. Old Willie G and Harley Davidsons were the very first people out of the gate with the FX in 1970, which was just a big twin with Sportster suspension, but it was an absolute hit. In fact, the FX completely changed the world of motorcycles, honestly. Norton was right behind Harley Davidson with the ill-fated High Rider, and Triumph threw their hat into the ring too with the Bonneville Special. Japan would not follow suit in the custom scene until 1976 with the Kawasaki KZ900 LTD. And after that motorcycle came out, as they do, every other single Japanese motorcycle manufacturer quickly fell in line. You had the Yamaha XS 1100 Special, you had the Honda CB750F, hell, even the original Goldwing when it came out in 1976. That motorcycle was seen as a customizable Harley Davidson competitor, not as like the plastic-clad touring beast that we know today. Now, even though there still was a few custom, as in cruiser-style parallel twins and even a V-twin in the Yamaha Virago in the early days, I feel like Japan finally had its heritage engine, the four-cylinder. And hey, even in the early 80s in the cruiser scene, Honda and Yamaha were playing around with V4s instead of inline 4s with the Honda Magna and the Yamaha VMAX. The motorcycles that were coming out of Japan were definitely influenced by the custom chopper scene and Easy Rider and all that stuff that happened in the 70s. Now, Harley Davidson was absolutely killing it in that market, but the bikes that Japan was coming out with were not Harley Davidson clones. While their existence was certainly a byproduct of Harley Davidson's success, their influence was still firmly in the custom and chopper scene. And the guys making custom choppers, they in no way just stuck to Harley Davidsons. There was just as many Triumphs and CB750s getting chopped and customized, but mostly people just customized what they already had. Whether that was a Honda Cub or a Moto Guzzi, it didn't matter. People worked with what they already had in their garage, and there was no standard rule saying that it had to be a V-twin. So what happened? Japan was giving us incredible, unique motorcycles. The Honda Magna, the Yamaha VMAX, the Suzuki GS 1100, the Kawasaki Eliminator. We just had these big bore chromed out cruisers that were so uniquely Japanese in the same way that big V-twins were uniquely American. Well, of course, the tariff happened, but that didn't stop the VMAX from being built. That one came out in '85, and the Eliminator came out in that time period as well. Japan was still very much building big bikes in that time period. Whether you blame the tariff for being a part of it or not, what really happened to Japanese cruisers was Harley Davidson's success. A lot of people will blame the tariff because they'll say that the tariff stopped Japan from making the motorcycles they wanted to make, but that's just not true. They were still making big motorcycles. What the tariff did is it allowed Harley Davidson to succeed, and Harley Davidson's success is what killed the Japanese cruiser, or at least killed what it could have been. The evolution Evolution engine absolutely killed it for Harley Davidson. The success was like unprecedented. The custom scene behind it was enormous. As I said earlier, Harley won so hard that they were like, yo, we just killed it so hard, we actually feel bad for Japan. We're gonna end the tariff early. As far as I know, there's no other company in the history of America that's ever actually done something like that. And what did Japan do the very second the tariff was lifted? They, very unfortunately, in my opinion, as they do, fell in line. One of the first things that hit American shores in '87 after the tariff was over was the Suzuki Intruder 1400, which was a Harley clone. But it was a Harley clone with the very distinguishing factor of being 1400 cc's, bigger than a Harley Davidson, which is also very much in line with what Japan does. Bigger, faster, cheaper. Everyone likes to say that Harley Davidson started these size wars. That is not true. It was absolutely Japan. Honda followed suit, as they do, and bumped up their Shadow line to 1100 cc's, and they even turned the once mighty Honda Magna into nothing but a plastic chromed Harley clone. It was really lame what they did to it. Kawasaki continued the copycat one-upsmanship with the Vulcan 1500, 100 cc's better. Yamaha got their Harley clone all the way up to 1700 cc's, even better. And of course, Honda came out and dropped the VTX 1800, 100 more cc's, and we also had the very, very short-lived Vulcan 2000. It always cracks me up when somebody who wasn't around to see all these bikes come out says that Harley Davidson just started these size wars. Harley engines pretty much stayed the same for most of this time. It's everyone else that kept like bumping theirs up. Their inline 4-cylinder cruisers were no more. The V4 cruisers, I mean, you had the VMAX that continued on for a long time, and of course the Yamaha Venture, although they definitely chromed that one out too, didn't they? And the VMAX only ever got one upgrade as a special star release. After the tariff lifted, Japan did what they had previously always done, which is just make a cheaper copy of something that's already performing successfully on the market. And since they were constantly chasing whatever the most popular thing that somebody else was doing, it really never allowed their designers to really go after a heritage engine of their own in the cruiser lineup. Now, sport bikes, they absolutely killed it in that one, okay? I'm not taking anything away from that. They killed it over there. I just really am in love with this alternate timeline where Honda and Yamaha pursued a V4 as their main cruiser power plant, and Suzuki and Kawasaki just like let their superbike technology from those inline 4s trickle down into inline 4s and cruisers. Instead, we just got a bunch of copycat designs and an incredibly useless displacement war in the V-twin market. And during this time period, they all made a lot of great bikes, I mean, on paper anyways. All the stats line up, man. They're amazing motorcycles, and on paper, they beat the pants off at pretty much any Harley Davidson of a similar year. And who knows, man, maybe pursuing a unique heritage engine in their cruiser line instead of just like copying what Harley was doing, maybe that just would have spelled an earlier death to the Japanese cruiser market. But even if it did, it would have given us some way cooler motorcycles. If there's anything to prop up my theory, it's the Honda Goldwing. Out of all the bikes that got brought into the American market to answer the whole customs scene, the Honda Goldwing, even though now, and in the 80s as well, it's about as far away as you can get from a custom motorcycle or a chopper. Out of all those unique engines, the V4s, the inline 4 cruisers, out of all that stuff, only the Goldwing remains. And only the Goldwing stayed true to the course and kept its unique heritage engine design. Is a flat 6 the very, very, very best engine for a job? I'm not saying it's horrible for the job, but is it really the best engine you can have for the job? I don't think so. But every time the Goldwing comes up for a redesign, they don't replace it with a more efficient engine configuration. They upgrade that flat engine. They upgrade the heritage engine of the Goldwing. And now a flat 6 is synonymous with Goldwing. Goldwings and their flat 6 are still kicking ass today. A little bit of a melancholy way to end this, but at this point, it's too little too late. Japanese cruisers as a whole, besides like the Rebel 1100 and a few other leftovers, like it's pretty much dead. The V4 and inline 4 custom cruiser scene that we could have had from Japan, this alternate timeline just with the advent of battery power, we're just never gonna see it. The internal combustion engine will be long gone by the time it gets to have a complete redesign. By the time the end of the 80s rolled around and a lot of the stuff started happening happening. That Japanese mentality, that mentality of just copy exactly what the other guy is doing, but make it cheaper. Just that mentality was really kind of an old school one. I'm not saying it never works. Obviously, people have success with that, but it doesn't always work. And while the tariff certainly didn't help matters at all, I think it's that mentality that eventually ruined Japanese cruisers. Harley was incredibly successful selling cruisers and factory customs in the 80s and 90s, and Japan tried to do the exact same thing. They copied their work. They did exactly what they did. And this time, didn't work. They tried making them bigger. They tried tacking on more chrome. They tried making them sound exactly like a Harley. They tried hiring Arlen Ness to design the headlight. They tried everything they could to make it so Harley-like, but cheaper, but a better alternative while being almost exactly the same. But what they really failed to do is the one thing that I would have really liked to see. They failed to make them unique. If you made it this far, you own a late 80s to early 2000s Japanese cruiser, please don't challenge me to a duel. I love Japanese bikes, but I don't love them any more than American bikes or British bikes or Italian bikes. Oh man, I owned a Kawasaki Vulcan 1500 and I put almost 100,000 miles on that bike. That's the only motorcycle I've ever bought brand new in my life. I loved that bike. And if you need to tell me I'm a drooling, mouth-breathing imbecile for not recognizing the cultural significance of the Honda VTX and the Kawasaki Vulcan, then you just go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. If you like the video, leave a like on it and consider subscribing. It really does help out. And if you really want to help, make sure you share this video with a Japanese cruiser owner who you know it'll piss off. That's gonna do it for this one, guys. Until next time, y'all, keep it weird.
Crashing through the sky comes a fearful cry. Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Armies of the night, evil taking flight. Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Panic spreading far and wide. Can the world oppose the deadliest of foes? Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. Who will risk it all to end the evil call of Shade tree, army. Shade tree, army. They never give up, they never say die, walking tall with banners high. Shade Tree Army, a ruthless gang of scum, villains, freaks, and bikers determined to rule the world.